Hi everyone, my name is Mary Fowler and I currently teach high school math at Parkview Baptist School in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I'm excited to be sharing with you today about a method to use in the classroom that I absolutely love, and that is cooperative learning. And so when you think about a high school classroom, when I think about my high school math classroom, I think about how we all came in, me and my friends, and we sat in rows, we watched our calculus teacher teach, she gave us examples, we took notes, we went home and did the homework, learned it on our own at home, came back, asked questions the next morning, and once we were done with that, we moved on to the next lesson. Now, every once in a while there was a quiz, and then at the end of a few weeks there'd be a test, and that was how we learned. I'm not saying that wasn't effective, but it sure wasn't very fun. And so a new method that we can use when teaching our students is cooperative learning. So what is cooperative learning? Cooperative learning is an instructional approach in which students work together in groups towards a learning goal. Okay, so these groups are made up of students with different views or different abilities, and they all work together to meet one goal. And so really what it is, it's individual accountability in a context of group interdependence. So when we're talking about cooperative learning, we're really talking about putting our students in groups and them taking ownership of their learning through those groups. Now, at Parkview Baptist School for the past few years, we've been focusing on visible learning in the classroom, and we've learned about effect sizes of different methods. And just a reminder, according to Hattie, Fisher, and Frey, and the people who wrote about visible learning, cooperative learning effect size, if it has a 0.4 or greater, then it is an effective method that should be used in the classroom. Cooperative learning has an effect size of 0.4, which is exactly where we want. And then when you compare it to competitive learning, so learning in groups as teams rather than learning individually, it actually has an effect size of 0.53. So learning about cooperative learning methods is really important because it can be utilized in the classroom to promote visible learning. So how does cooperative learning help our students? Well, first and foremost, it enhances interest. You know, when students take ownership of their learning and they're studying it, it enhances their interest. An example I can think about is, recently Hamilton, the musical, came out on Disney+. I've been a Hamilton fan for a few years now. And when I think back to my time in high school, I don't remember ever learning about Alexander Hamilton. I'm sure that I did, and I'm sure that somewhere along the way a history teacher taught it to me. But it wasn't until I started studying Alexander Hamilton's life through the musical that I decided to go and buy a biography and start reading about it. And that's because I was more invested in it because I had taken ownership of my learning. And that has translated into me learning a lot more about history through my own personal study. And it does the same for our students. When they have ownership of something, they're more interested in it. When they're working in groups, it also helps develop communication skills and social and teamwork skills. And this is especially important because as they leave high school and as they leave college and enter the workforce, employers are not looking for people who can do things all on their own. They're looking for people who can work well together. If you work in an engineering firm, yeah, there are some things you need to do by yourself and on your own, but more often than not, you're going to have to collaborate with others. And so by utilizing cooperative learning in the classroom, it helps prepare students for the workforce even after their education. So when you have cooperative learning in the classroom, there are 5 really important elements that need to be present in the classroom. The first is positive interdependence, which this means that they are all working towards one goal. They all have the same focus. They're working towards that goal. Face-to-face promotive interaction. They're also all individually helping one another and working together to reach that goal. Cooperative learning is about working as a group, but testing or assessing as individuals. And so because of that, they all have to work together to make sure that they reach the goal. Individual accountability. Every person is responsible to help others learn because you will be individually assessed. You need to have social skills. So even if you're working with students who don't have great social skills, cooperative learning can help them develop those social skills. And then team processing. It helps them learn how to evaluate themselves as a team. What do we do well? What do we not do so well? What do we need to improve on? All of these are elements that take place when you utilize cooperative learning in your classroom. So where do you start? If you're like, this sounds great, but where do I begin? Well, I would suggest starting at the beginning of the year to try to cultivate that feeling of cooperative learning in your classroom. First of all, start with small groups working with short, highly structured activities. Okay, so maybe the first week of school, you do a cooperative learning exercise and you teach your students about what it looks like. You can teach them especially by working with one group and allowing the other groups to watch and intervening when necessary. So you've got this group at the front and they are working together and you're interjecting every now and then saying, okay, yeah, this is really good what you just contributed to the conversation. How can we incorporate Sarah more into the conversation? It's teaching them and showing the rest of the class what they need to be doing. And then establishing normalities, establishing those team norms within the classroom, which I'll elaborate on in just a minute. So there's lots of different methods that we're going to talk about for cooperative learning. The most important one though, and probably the one that comes to your mind first, is utilizing interactive groups. Students are divided into groups that work together to accomplish the goal, and these groups can be informal or formal. Now the difference between those, when you think of a formal cooperative learning interactive group, think you're assigning a group a project that they're working on for the next week. That's more of a formal, they're doing it for an extended amount of time. Informal, on the other hand, that might be you just doing a one-day activity in class, or you spending 10 minutes where students discuss a chapter that they read the night before from a book in English. So informal doesn't take as much time, and it's much more, I like to think, kind of spur of the moment. It is obviously planned out because we're teachers and we have lesson plans and we know what we're doing, but it's more of spur of the moment what you're doing for that day compared to doing for a longer amount of time. So a suggestion whenever you're establishing cooperative learning in your classroom, especially when you're using interactive groups, is to give roles within groups. And for me in my high school classroom, I might not go around and assign a role to every person every time, but I might make a poster that has a suggested list of roles that people could take on. These roles can include a team leader who makes sure to keep everybody on task, someone who is a checker, so maybe they're checking to make sure everyone understands each concept that's being discussed before they move on to the next one, a recorder and editor who are responsible for taking notes or developing the project that's going to be turned in, the gatekeeper, kind of maybe the peacekeeper, the person who is helping to avoid conflict and making sure that everybody is getting a chance to speak and getting a chance to be a part of the conversation. And then a praiser. This is really good for students who are really encouraging, to help encourage the entire group. This is actually really good because it helps students recognize where their strengths lie. And once again, this helps them as they prepare for a world beyond education in the workforce. So coming back to team norms, which we talked about a second ago, when you utilize cooperative learning in the classroom, it's important to make sure students understand what is expected of them as a group and what is expected of them individually. So as a group, some suggested team norms, and this could be something you emphasize to them that first week, or you keep on a poster throughout the entire year. Some suggested team norms: everybody contributes to the task. Everyone listens to each other. Everyone must encourage the group members to participate. Everyone praises each other and encourages each other. They ask for help if it's needed. There is a teacher still in there. While they are taking ownership of their learning, the teacher is there to help. Check for understanding, make sure all people understand, and then staying on task. And once again, kind of the purpose of establishing roles is that each role is helping make sure that this team norm is followed. So like I said, that would be a great thing to include in the front of the classroom on a sign. There's also individual responsibilities that you need to teach your students about. This is how you can be the best person in a group. You need to be able to try, you need to be able to ask questions, to help each other, to be polite to each other, to praise each other and to give recognition to each other, to listen, and to always be present and not just daydreaming while everybody else is doing the work. If you're teaching your students how to do these, then it will be much more effective and help them not only develop as learners in the classroom, but also help them as they leave secondary school and college and go into the workforce. Now, of course, there is still a teacher in the room, and that teacher's goal should be to monitor the groups. This involves giving feedback, encouraging and praising the groups, teaching them skills, and even using it as a way to learn more about the students and their personalities. Okay, now I'm going to talk about a few different methods real quick. The first one is reciprocal learning. You can use this. This is super easy, spur of the moment. Students are put into pairs or groups. They take turns being the learner and the coach. And so the coach is trying to make sure that the student or the learner truly grasps the material, and then they switch places. And this just helps kind of allow different people to take on different roles, but give everybody a chance to be all the roles. Think, Pair, Share is one of my favorites because you can use it and it literally takes 5 minutes. In my math classroom, I use this one all the time. I might ask a math problem, I ask a question. I might give students a chance to work out that question on a piece of paper, and then I say, okay, think about it, now turn and pair it with a partner, and then they turn and they share their answer with a peer, and then groups are given a chance to share that answer. In my classroom, that means they would write it on the board, and in the English classroom, you might hear from different groups about what they said. So that's kind of what the Think, Pair, Share method looks like. Jigsaw is actually one of my favorites. It's a little complicated to explain, so I'm going to start off with this graphic. So students are sorted into what's called an expert or a focus group, and that focus group becomes experts on one particular concept. You know, if they're learning about World War II, Group 1, they are becoming experts on the Allied forces. Group 2 is becoming experts on the Axis forces. Group 3 is becoming experts on the war in the Pacific, and Group 4 is the war in Europe. And so they become experts on these things, and once everybody in the group is an expert, you split the groups into groups that combine all of the experts, and then those experts takes turns teaching that concept to their groups. This is a really great way to incorporate everyone in the classroom. And then my personal favorite, because I use it so much in my classroom, is utilizing a flipped classroom. Like I said earlier, what we expect is for teachers to teach, students to go home and do their homework and learn. Well, we're going to flip it around. Instead, students learn the material outside of the classroom through videos, and when they come into the classroom, that's the time that they use to hone in on their work, to hone in on what they do. For me in my classroom, I lecture at the beginning of the week, maybe 1, possibly 2 days, but the rest of the days are known as lab days, where students can work independently or individually on their math homework and actually do it instead of just watching me do it. I love this method. I think it is great, and it's my favorite cooperative learning method that I use. And of course, there's lots of technology opportunities that you can use. You can use cloud-based Word documents. There's all sorts of different internet games and educational games that can be used in cooperative learning. So you're probably thinking, well, cooperative learning is great, but isn't my classroom going to be crazy like people talking all the time? While it might be a little crazy with all the kids talking all the time, it actually is very helpful in classroom management. It promotes time on tasks, it helps students stay focused on what they're supposed to be doing. It challenges those students who are really good at learning and who learning comes easily to them. It challenges them to help peer teach their other peers, and then it helps those struggling students be more engaged in their learning. And it improves relationship among students, and as those relationships improve, discipline problems lessen. So that's some of the classroom management advantages of utilizing cooperative learning. And then, of course, as I teach at Parkview Baptist School, it's important to recognize that cooperative learning actually is very biblically based. In Romans 12, which I'm going to go ahead and flip to that, it talks about how we, as one body, this is talking about the church, we have many members, and how all members have different gifts, and we can all use those different gifts for one purpose. And so when we're thinking about cooperative learning, when we utilize this in our classrooms, especially in a Christian school, we're teaching kids how they can use their gifts to help work together as a group. And that translates directly in what we are called to do as the church. And so as I'm teaching cooperative learning in my school, it helps establish what does it look like to use my gifts to help further the kingdom of God. It promotes collaborative servanthood, which is really important, and it also gives students a sense of mutual responsibility and the sharing of gifts. And so that is my presentation on cooperative learning. I hope that you can use something that I've said today to help you in your journey to utilize cooperative learning in your classroom. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. And if you would like to know about any of the resources that I use, I will be more than happy to share those with you as well. Okay? Thank you very much.